The day my husband demoted me started like any other Monday at Rivera Tech. I arrived at 7:30 a.m. sharp, as I had for the past 12 years. The security guard nodded respectfully as I badged in. "Morning, Dr. Rivera." I smiled back, balancing my coffee and laptop bag while pushing through the heavy glass doors of the building that bore my family name. I'm Dr. Sofia Rivera, co-founder and, until that morning, Chief Innovation Officer of Rivera Pharmaceuticals. The company started in our garage 15 years ago, built on my research and the 4 patents I developed during my postdoctoral fellowship. My husband Miguel handled the business side while I created the science that made us millions. The company had grown beyond our wildest dreams. From that garage operation to a gleaming 6-story building with over 300 employees. Our flagship drug, Neurovia, revolutionized migraine treatment without the side effects of traditional medications. That was my baby, my formula, my sleepless nights, my breakthrough. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I should have noticed the signs earlier. The closed-door meetings I wasn't invited to. Miguel staying later and later at the office. The way our new VP of Marketing, Amber Daniels, seemed to know company decisions before I did. But when you're in the lab 12 hours a day perfecting your next breakthrough, these things can slip by. That Monday, Miguel's assistant Tara looked uncomfortable when I arrived at my office. "Dr. Rivera," she said, avoiding my eyes. "Mr. Rivera would like to see you in the conference room." The formality was unusual. Miguel and I usually grabbed coffee together before starting our day. "Everything okay, Tara?" I asked, sitting down. "My things. I think it's best if Mr. Rivera explains," she said, her voice small. The main conference room was already filled with familiar faces. Our CFO, legal counsel, the head of HR, and the board members. And there, in what had always been my seat at the right hand of Miguel's chair at the head of the table, sat Amber, looking polished and poised in a designer suit that probably cost more than most of our researchers made in a month. "Sophia, thank you for joining us," Miguel said coolly, as if I were just another employee and not his wife of 16 years. Not the woman whose research built the foundation of this entire company. "Please, have a seat." The only empty chair was halfway down the table, squeezed between our elderly board member Walter and a woman I didn't recognize. "What's going on?" I asked, remaining standing. Something was very wrong, and the tightness in my chest told me I already knew what it was. Miguel cleared his throat. "We're announcing some organizational changes today. As the company continues to grow, we need to shift our focus more heavily toward commercial expansion and market penetration." Corporate speak. My husband was talking to me in corporate speak. "In line with this strategic direction," he continued, "we're restructuring the executive team. Amber will be stepping into the newly created role of Chief Operating Officer, overseeing both marketing and product development." The room started to spin slightly. "And my role?" I managed to ask, though I already knew the answer. "You'll be transitioning to Director of Research, reporting to Amber. This will allow you to focus solely on what you do best, the science, while Amber handles the business integration. It's really a win for everyone. Except me. I was being demoted in my own company. My husband was demoting me, and having me report to the woman who had been whispering in his ear for months. This is effective immediately, Miguel added, not quite meeting my eyes. We'll send out a company-wide announcement this afternoon. I looked around the table. Walter looked uncomfortable. The others were studiously examining their notepads or phones. Only Amber met my gaze, with what I could swear was the slightest smirk playing at the corner of her glossy lips. "I see," was all I could say. 16 years of marriage, 12 years building this company together, and this was how it ended? In a sterile conference room with witnesses? I wanted to scream. I wanted to flip the table. I wanted to remind everyone that without my patents, without my scientific mind, without my breakthroughs, Rivera Pharmaceuticals would be nothing but a failed garage startup. Instead, I straightened my spine, nodded once, and said, "If that's what's best for the company." I turned and walked out before anyone could see the tears threatening to spill. I wouldn't give her, the satisfaction. Back in my office, soon to be relocated to some corner of the R&D department, no doubt, I sat at my desk and tried to breathe. My phone buzzed with a text from Miguel. "We can talk about this at home. It's not personal, just business." "Not personal?" I threw the phone across the room where it hit the wall with a satisfying crack. That's when I noticed the folder on my desk labeled Patent Renewal Documentation, Urgent Review Required. It had been on my to-do list for weeks, but with our latest clinical trials, I hadn't gotten to it yet. I opened it slowly, my research scientist's mind finally clicking into gear. The 4 cornerstone patents that Rivera Pharmaceuticals was built on, my patents, were coming up for renewal. Patents that were still in my name personally, not the company's, because Miguel had insisted we keep things separate for tax purposes. My hand stopped shaking as I reached for my laptop. Perhaps this wasn't the end after all. Perhaps it was just the beginning of something else entirely. My husband might have forgotten whose brilliance built this empire, but the United States Patent and Trademark Office certainly hadn't. I picked up the phone and called the only person I knew I could trust right now, my former lab partner and best friend, Lydia, who'd left Rivera 2 years ago after a disagreement with Miguel. "Lydia, it's me. I need a good patent attorney. Today. Amber might have my seat at the table. Miguel might have my dignity. But I still had the patents, and that changed everything." Lydia's law office recommendation didn't disappoint. 3 hours after being publicly humiliated, I sat across from Renata Okafor, patent attorney extraordinaire, whose reputation for ruthlessness was matched only by the elegance of her corner office overlooking the city. "These are solid," she said, scanning the patent documentation with practiced eyes. "And they're registered solely in your name, not the company's?" "Correct." I leaned forward. My husband thought it would be smarter for tax purposes. His idea, not mine. Renata's smile was razor sharp. "His mistake, your advantage. These 4 patents are the foundation of Rivera Pharmaceuticals' entire product line. Without them, they're just an empty building with a lot of equipment. What are my options?" My voice sounded steadier than I felt. "Several," she replied, typing rapidly on her keyboard. "First, you need to renew these immediately, keeping them in your name only. Second, we renegotiate your employment contract. They think they've demoted you? Fine. Let's make that demotion cost them." My phone buzzed incessantly, Miguel calling for the 7th time. I silenced it again. "I should tell you," I said. "My husband won't take this lying down. He's relentless when he wants something." "I'm counting on it," Renata said, closing her laptop. "The more desperately they need these patents, the stronger our position." As I left her office, a text from Lydia appeared. "Drinks tonight? You look like you need them." We met at our old graduate school haunt, a dive bar where we'd celebrated our first published research paper 15 years ago. Lydia ordered our usual, whiskey neat for her, gin and tonic for me. "So he finally did it," she said, raising her glass. "Pushed you aside for that marketing barracuda. You saw this coming?" The gin burned my throat. "Oh, honey." Her eyes softened, with sympathy. "Everyone did. Amber's been positioning herself for months. That weekend strategy retreat in Aspen? The one Miguel said was executives only? Ice flooded my veins. What about it? My cousin works at the resort. Said your husband. And Amber shared more than strategic insights. The glass shattered in my hand before I realized I'd gripped it too hard. Blood mingled with gin and ice on the scratched wooden table. Sophia! Lydia grabbed napkins, pressing them to my palm. It's fine, I said mechanically, though nothing was fine. The pieces locked together with sickening clarity, the late nights, the weekend trips, the sudden demotion. How long? At least 6 months from what I've heard. Lydia's voice was gentle, but her words were grenades. 6 months. While I'd been developing our next breakthrough drug, working 16-hour days, my husband had been sleeping with the woman he'd just promoted above me. I need to go. I stood abruptly, throwing cash on the table. Where? Sophia, you're bleeding. Let me drive you. I'll call a car. I need to get some things from the house while Miguel's still at the office. An hour later, I stood in our bedroom, our marble and mahogany showcase that had never felt less like home. I packed methodically. Clothes, jewelry, important documents. In Miguel's home office, I hesitated only briefly before using his password, still my birthday, ironically, to access his computer. The evidence was worse than I'd imagined. Emails between him and Amber dating back 8 months, plans for my role transition discussed 6 weeks ago. Projections showing how removing my executive salary would boost their quarterly numbers. I forwarded everything to my personal email, then spotted a folder labeled Patent Strategy. Inside was a memo from our legal team, dated 2 months ago. Recommend immediate transfer of S. Rivera's personal patents to company ownership before proposed organizational changes. My hands shook with rage. They'd been planning to force me to sign over my patents. That's why the demotion was so sudden. They needed me sidelined before I realized what was happening. I was packing the last of my things when headlights swept across the bedroom windows. Miguel was home early. Sophia? He called from downstairs, his voice echoing through our cavernous entryway. We need to talk about today. I zipped my suitcase closed. Yes, we certainly do. He appeared in the doorway, his expression shifting from conciliatory to alarm when he spotted my luggage. What are you doing? Leaving, I said simply. Unless you'd prefer I stay and discuss exactly how long you've been sleeping with my new boss? His face drained of color. It's not what you think. Spare me. I moved past him toward the stairs. By the way, I accessed your computer. The patent strategy memo was particularly enlightening. He grabbed my arm, fingers digging in. You had no right. Like you had no right to plan my demotion with your mistress? I wrenched away. Or to discuss stealing my patents? Those patents belong to the company, he hissed, mask of civility finally slipping. Everything we built was together. Funny, I don't remember you spending 5 years in the lab perfecting the Neurovia formula. I don't recall you sacrificing our chance at children because you were exposed to experimental compounds. Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. Where are you going? Somewhere you can't find me, I replied. And Miguel? Tell Amber she might want to delay that company announcement. Things are about to get complicated. I walked out the front door of the mansion my success had built, climbed into the waiting car, and didn't look back. As we pulled away, my phone buzzed with an email from Renata. Strategy meeting tomorrow, 8 a.m. Bring everything. For the first time that day, I smiled. They thought they'd planned the perfect coup. They hadn't counted on me fighting back. The numbers on Lydia's monitor made my stomach drop. I'd reviewed clinical trial data hundreds of times, but never like this. Never hunting for manipulation in my own company's research. There. Lydia pointed to a discrepancy in the spreadsheet. The adverse reaction rates in the final report are half what they were in the original data collection. That's impossible. I leaned closer, the blue light of the screen reflecting off my face. These changes would make CT27 look significantly safer than it actually is. Exactly. Lydia pulled up another file. And look at the efficacy data. They've inflated the success rates by nearly 30%. Who had access to modify these files? I scrolled through the system logs, a chill running down my spine. Amber. She requested special access 3 weeks ago, claiming she needed it for investor materials. Jesus, Sophia. Lydia's voice dropped. They're falsifying clinical trial data. That's not just corporate backstabbing. That's federal fraud. My mind raced through the implications. The new drug was scheduled for FDA submission next month. If approved based on falsified data, patients could be harmed or killed. The company would face criminal charges. People would go to prison. We need to download everything, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Original data, modified files, access logs, everything. As Lydia worked, my phone buzzed with a text from Tara. Did you find it? Not safe to talk here. M&A arguing. In his office about board meeting. I texted back. Found it. Need to meet. Tomorrow, 7 a.m., Riverside Coffee? Her response, we'll try. Watch your back. Security just collected your personal items from office. The doorbell rang, startling us both. Lydia checked her security camera and swore. It's Miguel. My heart hammered against my ribs. How did he find me? Probably tracked your phone. Go to the bedroom. I'll handle him. I slipped away, but stayed. Close enough to hear. The front door opened. Lydia. Miguel's voice dripped with false warmth. Always a pleasure. Is my wife here? Your wife? Lydia's tone could have frozen lava. Funny, I thought she was your director of research now. This isn't the time for games. I know she's staying with you. And I know you're sleeping with her. Replacement while planning to steal her patents. Guess we're both informed. A thump. Miguel's fist hitting something. This is a private matter between me and Sophia. Private like company emails discussing how to force her out? Or private like falsifying clinical trial data? Silence stretched for 3 heartbeats. I don't know what she told you, Miguel finally said, his voice dangerously quiet. But she's confused. Emotional. The board unanimously agreed her skills are better utilized in research than executive leadership. Save it for someone who hasn't known you both for 15 years. Keys jingled, Lydia grabbing her car keys as a hint for him to leave. She's not here. Now get off my property before... I call the police. The door slammed. Through the bedroom window, I watched Miguel storm to his Porsche, his face contorted with rage as he made a call. Lydia appeared in the doorway. We should move you somewhere else. He'll be back, probably with corporate counsel. No. I stood, surprising myself with my calm. I'm done running. Let's finish downloading the evidence, then call Renata. It's time to add criminal fraud to our arsenal. By midnight, we'd compiled everything into a secure file and sent it to Renata. Her response was immediate. This changes everything. Meet me at 6 a.m. I barely slept, my mind replaying moments from my marriage, searching for signs I'd missed. Had Miguel always seen me as a means to an end? Was I just the brilliant scientist whose work he could exploit? When had his ambition outweighed whatever love we once shared? Dawn found me clear-eyed and resolved. This wasn't just about my career or marriage anymore. It was about preventing harm to patients. Renata's office hummed with pre-dawn activity when I arrived. 4 associates huddled over documents while Renata paced, dictating notes to her assistant, Sophia. She gestured me in. We've been working all night. The fraud angle gives us a nuclear option, but we need to be strategic. What do you mean? Right now, only a handful of people know about the data manipulation. You, Lydia, Tara, presumably Miguel and Amber. Once we go public, there's no controlling the fallout. I sank into a chair. The company could collapse. Exactly. Your patents would be worth a fraction of their current value. Your legacy tarnished by association, even though you're the whistleblower. She tapped a folder. But there's another approach. The plan she outlined was elegant in its ruthlessness. We would inform Walter and 2 other trusted board members before the meeting. Present evidence of both the patent situation and the fraud. Offer a solution. Miguel and Amber's immediate removal, my reinstatement as CEO, and a quiet correction of the falsified data before submission. The board will have to choose, Renata explained. A controlled transition with minimal public damage, or an explosive scandal that destroys the company and their investments. They'll choose survival, I said, understanding the leverage. Most will. Some are loyal to Miguel. That's why we need to meet Tara before the board meeting. Her testimony could sway the holdouts. At 6:55 a.m., I entered Riverside Coffee through the back door as arranged. The morning rush provided cover as I slid into a booth in the corner. No sign of Tara yet. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Change of plans. Meet me in the parking garage across the street. Level P3. Important. Tara. Something felt wrong. Tara was methodical, precise. She wouldn't change meeting locations last minute. I called Lydia. Tara wants to meet in the parking garage instead. Does that seem off to you? Completely. Don't. Go. It screams trap. As we spoke, I glanced out the window. A black SUV with tinted windows idled across the street. Through the coffee shop's glass front, I spotted a familiar face. Miguel's head of security scanning the tables. I think I've been found, I whispered. There's a security team here. Get out now. Use the service exit. I'm 3 minutes away. My pulse pounded as I slipped through the kitchen, ignoring a barista's protests. Out in the alley, I ran toward the street behind the coffee shop, looking for Lydia's car. A hand grabbed my arm, yanking me into the shadow of a dumpster. I opened my mouth to scream. Don't! Tara's face appeared inches from mine. They're watching all the exits. How did you— I never sent that text about the garage. It's a setup. She glanced nervously toward the street. Miguel knows you. Have the data. He's desperate. Where's your car? I asked. 2 blocks east, but we need to hurry. Amber called an emergency executive session for 8 a.m. They're going to push through a resolution claiming all intellectual property belongs to the company, including patents predating employment. I texted Lydia our location as Tara led me through a maze of service alleys behind the shops. Finally, we reached her nondescript sedan. What made you help me? I asked as she drove, constantly checking her mirrors for followers. Her knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. 6 months ago, I found messages between Miguel and Amber discussing the clinical data. When I asked questions, Miguel threatened my job. I have a son with medical needs. I couldn't risk it. Shame colored her voice. But I can't be part of hurting patients. My son's alive because of ethical researchers like you. We pulled up to Renata's office building through the underground entrance, avoiding the lobby security cameras. Upstairs, chaos erupted when Tara revealed the emergency session. Renata immediately called Walter, confirming our fears. They're trying to outmaneuver us, Renata said, grabbing her briefcase. We need to get to that meeting. How? I asked. I'm not an executive anymore. I can't just walk in. Walter's gravelly voice answered through the speakerphone. Leave that to me. Just get to the building. 20 minutes later, as Miguel and Amber prepared to present to the assembled executives and 3 board members, the conference room door swung open. Walter entered first, followed by Renata, Tara, and me. The blood drained from Miguel's face, as his gaze locked with mine. What is the meaning of this? Amber demanded, half rising from my former seat. Walter smiled thinly. As chairman of the audit committee, I've called an emergency board meeting on suspicion of fraudulent activity. This executive session is hereby adjourned. Amber looked to Miguel, panic flashing in her eyes. You can't do that. Actually, Walter said, placing a folder on the table, I can. And given what's in this folder, Ms. Daniels, I suggest you choose your next words very carefully. Miguel stood, desperation radiating from him. Whatever she told you, stop. My voice cut through the room, steadier than I'd ever heard it. "It's over, Miguel." Then I laid out exactly how it would end. 3 weeks into my reclaimed CEO position, I discovered the real reason for my demotion. It wasn't just the affair or Miguel's ego. It was compound RX 720. I found it buried in a restricted server folder while reviewing our research pipeline. A migraine treatment exponentially more effective than Neurovia, developed in a secret lab using my original formulas. The clinical trials had been conducted off-books through a shell company in Singapore. And according to the documentation, it was ready for FDA fast-track submission, under Amber's patent application. "They were going to steal your research and push you out before you discovered it," Lydia said, examining the molecular structure on my tablet as we sat in my new corner office. "This could have made billions." "It already has a patent application filed," I said, scrolling through the documents. Amber listed herself as lead researcher and sole inventor. "Can she do that?" "Not legally. It's derived from my original work." I enlarged a section of the formula. "See this binding mechanism? It's identical to the one I developed during my postdoc. They modified the delivery system, but the core science is mine." Lydia shook her head. "So what now? Another legal battle?" "First, I need to understand exactly what they were planning." I reached for my phone. "And I know who might have those answers." Tara located the address from HR records. A sleek downtown apartment paid for by a company housing allowance. 2 hours later, I stood outside Amber's door, security footage from the office building showing her arrival home 30 minutes earlier. She answered wearing yoga pants and a Rivera Pharmaceuticals sweatshirt, my company's logo across her chest. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. "Dr. Rivera?" Her surprise seemed genuine. "I didn't expect to see you here." Clearly. I held up my tablet displaying the RX 720 files. "We need to talk." Something flickered behind her eyes. Calculation, then resignation. She stepped back. "I suppose we do." Her apartment was minimalist, expensive, and impersonal. No photos, no mementos, nothing revealing the woman behind the ambition. She poured herself a generous glass of wine without offering me one. "Let me guess," she said, perching on a white leather chair. "You found the Singapore trials and the patent application with your name on it. Funny, I don't recall you having a PhD in neuropharmacology or any advanced science degree." She sipped her wine. "Does it matter? The research is solid. The drug works." "It works because it's built on my foundational research, which you stole and claimed as your own. I prefer leveraged existing intellectual property." "Isn't that what business is? Building on what came before?" Her composure unnerved me. She'd lost everything, yet spoke as if merely discussing strategy, not when it involves fraud and theft. I set the tablet down. "I want to know why. You had a promising career. Why risk everything?" For the first time, genuine emotion crossed her face. Not remorse, but something darker. "Why?" She laughed, a sharp sound like breaking glass. "Because women like you had it all handed to you. The right schools, the right mentors, the right opportunities. Do you know how I started at Rivera? As a receptionist, with student loans and a marketing degree from a state school no one respects. So this was, what? Revenge? This was survival." She set down her glass. "I worked 60-hour weeks for 5 years before anyone even learned my name. I pitched ideas that Miguel dismissed until I figured out what he really wanted." A bitter smile. "And once I gave him that, doors magically opened. You slept your way to the top." "I did what was necessary in a system designed for me to fail." Her chin lifted. "You created brilliant science, I'll give you that. But you were blind to the business realities. Rivera needed to move beyond one hit wonders, and you were too focused on perfect science to see it. So you falsified clinical data and stole my research." I leaned forward. "Where does Miguel fit in this scheme?" Her laugh surprised me. Miguel? He thought RX 720 was his idea. I fed him bits of research I found in your archived notes, letting him believe he was the visionary connecting dots no one else could see. By the time he suggested developing it as a separate project, he'd forgotten where the original concept came from. The realization hit me. You were manipulating him too. Everyone is manipulating everyone, Dr. Rivera. Some of us are just better at it. She refilled her glass. So what happens now? More legal action? Public humiliation? I studied. Her brilliant in her way, ruthless, damaged. In another life, under different circumstances, she might have been a valuable ally instead of an enemy. That depends on you, I said. I'm here to offer a deal. Her eyebrows rose. You can't be serious. RX 720 is legitimate science despite how it was developed. It could help millions of migraine sufferers. I won't bury it out of spite. I laid out my terms. She would transfer the patent application to Rivera Pharmaceuticals, acknowledging me as principal researcher. In exchange, she would receive a development credit and a small royalty, enough to restart elsewhere, but not enough to make the theft worthwhile. Why would you offer me anything? Suspicion narrowed her eyes. You could destroy me completely. Because, unlike you and Miguel, I can separate business from personal vendettas. The science matters more than my ego. She studied me for a long moment. And if I refuse? The boardroom felt like a courtroom as I presented the evidence. Original clinical data side by side with the fraudulent version, system logs showing Amber's access, emails discussing how to adjust unfavorable results. This isn't just corporate malfeasance, I said, my voice carrying to every corner of the suddenly silent room. This is criminal fraud that could have harmed or killed patients relying on our medications. The 3 board members present exchanged glances heavy with implication. The other executives stared at the floor or their devices, unwilling to meet anyone's eyes. Only Amber maintained her composure, her manicured nails tapping rhythmically against the polished table. These are serious allegations from a disgruntled former executive. Dr. Rivera clearly has motives to damage this company after her reassignment. Former executive? Walter's eyebrows rose. Interesting characterization, given the company-wide announcement of Dr. Rivera's demotion appears to have been delayed. Miguel finally found his voice. This is absurd. Sophia, what are you hoping to accomplish here? Destroying everything we built because your ego couldn't handle a necessary restructuring? The casual cruelty of his dismissal sparked something molten inside me. 16 years of partnership reduced to a bruised ego? I leaned forward, palms flat on the table. What I'm accomplishing, Miguel, is presenting this board with 2 options. I nodded to Renata, who distributed folders to each board member. Option 1 is detailed on page 1. My patents, which as you can see from the legal documentation remain solely in my name, will be licensed exclusively to a new entity, Rivera Bioscience. Your company can negotiate licensing fees at market rates or cease production of every product developed from my research. The CFO blanched, frantically flipping through the papers. This would bankrupt us within quarters. And that's before we address the fraud, Renata added smoothly. Option 2 involves federal authorities, public disclosure, and inevitable criminal charges. One of the board members, a silver-haired woman I'd always respected, removed her glasses. And the alternative? Page 3, I replied. Full reinstatement as CEO. Miguel and Amber's immediate termination. Correction of all clinical data before FDA submission. The company survives with minimal public disruption. Miguel slammed his fist down. This is blackmail. You can't seriously expect— I expect this board to fulfill its fiduciary duty, Walter interrupted. Unless you believe shareholders would prefer federal indictments and collapse of the stock. The tension in the room was palpable as the board members conferred in whispers. Finally, the silver-haired woman straightened. Dr. Rivera, Ms. Okafor, Mr. Winters, would you excuse us? We need to discuss this privately with Mr. Rivera and Ms. Daniels. In the hallway, Walter squeezed my shoulder. You did brilliantly. They'll make the right choice. How can you be sure? My confidence wavered now that the adrenaline was fading. Because I've known these people for decades. They're pragmatists above all. Their choice is between a scandal that destroys them or a leadership change that saves them. He glanced at his watch. They should be calling for Amber's resignation right about now. On cue, the boardroom door opened, and Amber stormed out. Face contorted with fury. She locked eyes with me as she passed. You'll regret this, she hissed. You have no idea what you've done. Actually, I replied calmly, I know exactly what I've done. I've protected patients, saved the company, and taken back what's mine. She left without another word, the click of her heels fading down the corridor. The silver-haired board member appeared in the doorway. Dr. Rivera, we're ready for you now. Miguel sat alone at the table, staring at nothing, his usual confidence shattered. He didn't look up as I entered. The board has unanimously accepted your terms, the board member announced. Effective immediately, you are reinstated as Chief Executive Officer. Mr. Rivera will tender his resignation by end of day. Relief washed over me, quickly followed by a strange hollowness. This victory meant the definitive end of my marriage, the collapse of a relationship that had defined half my life. Miguel finally raised his eyes to mine. Congratulations, he said flatly. You've won. This wasn't about winning. The words came from somewhere deep and true. It was about justice. For me, for our patients, for the company we built. The company you'll now run without me. His bitterness was palpable. Tell me, was this your plan all along? Did you keep those patents in your name knowing someday you'd use them against me? No, Miguel. Unlike you, I believed in our partnership. I sat across from him, suddenly exhausted. I kept those patents in my name because you suggested it. Remember? For tax purposes? Perhaps on some level, you always knew what you were capable of. Something shifted in his expression, recognition perhaps of the depth of his betrayal. For a moment, I glimpsed the man I'd once loved. What happens now? He asked quietly. You'll receive the severance package outlined in your contract. In exchange for your silence about the clinical data issues, the board won't pursue legal action. I stood, smoothing my borrowed blouse. As for us personally, I'll have my attorney contact yours regarding divorce proceedings. He nodded once, defeat finally settling over him. And Amber? That's no longer my concern. Or yours. As I turned to leave, he called after me. Sophia. The thing with Amber, it wasn't planned, it just happened. I paused at the door. Nothing. Just happens. Miguel. You made choices. So did I. The difference is, I can live with mine. The next hours passed in a blur of legalities and transitions. By mid-afternoon, I sat in what had been Miguel's office, now mine, fielding calls from board members and reviewing the damage Amber had done to our research protocols. Tara knocked tentatively on the open door. Dr. Rivera, security has cleared out Ms. Daniels' office. We found these. She placed a stack of notebooks on my desk, my original research journals, which had gone missing months ago. Thank you, Tara. I ran my fingers over the worn covers. And thank you for coming forward. That took extraordinary courage. She shifted uncomfortably. I should have done it sooner. You did it when it mattered most. I opened my drawer, pulling out a company folder. I'd like you to consider a new position. Executive Assistant to the CEO, with a substantial increase in salary and benefits that will cover your son's medical needs. Her eyes widened. Are you serious? Completely. I need people I can trust, people with integrity. After she left, I walked to the windows overlooking the city. From this height, I could see the university where I'd earned my doctorate, the small lab where I'd first synthesized the compound that would become Neurovia. even the apartment building, where Miguel and I had lived when we were newlyweds, with nothing but ambition and love. My phone buzzed with a text from Lydia. CEO again by lunchtime. Impressed, but not surprised. Celebration dinner tonight? I smiled, typing back. Absolutely. But first, I need to make some calls. The first was to Walter, thanking him for his support and inviting him to chair our new ethics committee. The second was to Renata, who would oversee a complete review of our intellectual property strategy. The third call was the hardest, to my mother, who had never quite trusted Miguel, but had kept her concerns to herself for my sake. I heard you're running the company now, she said, pride evident in her voice. Miguel didn't take it well, I imagine. No. I sank into my chair, suddenly fighting tears. He's out. The marriage is over. Everything's changed, Mom. Not everything, she said gently. You're still the brilliant, determined girl who decided at 12 that she would cure migraines after watching me suffer for years. You still did that. You still built something meaningful. The only thing that's changed is now you get the credit you deserve. As the sun set over the city, I opened my old research journal to the first page, where I'd scribbled my initial breakthrough formula. 15 years ago? In the margin was a note in Miguel's handwriting. This is going to change the world. So proud of you. I closed the book, letting go of what was to embrace what would be. Tomorrow would bring challenges, rebuilding trust with the team, correcting the research, redefining the company's direction. But for the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt truly in control of my destiny. My husband had demoted me for his assistant, but he'd forgotten I held the patents. His mistake. My future. Then I file criminal charges for intellectual property theft, patent fraud, and corporate espionage. Your career won't just stall, it will end. The next morning, the signed agreement arrived by courier. Amber had taken the deal. As I filed the paperwork, Walter appeared in my doorway. Wise decision, he said, nodding at the agreement. Litigation would have been messy. It felt right, I admitted. The drug itself shouldn't suffer for its creator's mistakes. He settled into a chair, joints creaking. I came to tell you that Miguel's office has been fully cleared out. He's requesting permission to address the research team before he leaves for good. My grip tightened on my pen. Why? Closure, perhaps, or one last attempt to salvage his reputation. Walter watched me carefully. The question is whether you're secure enough in your position to allow it. The challenge in his words was unmistakable. Was I still defining myself in opposition to Miguel? Or was I ready to lead on my own terms? Tell him he has 15 minutes. In the main auditorium, where everyone can attend if they choose. Walter nodded approvingly. The board meeting is set for Thursday. They'll want to hear your vision for the company's future. They'll get it, along with some overdue changes. After he left, I opened my private lab, a space I'd insisted on as part of my reinstatement terms. Here, surrounded by equipment and the clean scent of isopropyl alcohol, I felt most myself. On the work table lay the preliminary data for the project I'd been developing in secret before my demotion, a potential treatment for early-onset Alzheimer's. My phone chimed with a message from Renata. Divorce papers filed. Miguel contesting nothing. Smart man. I set the phone down and returned to my microscope. The past was settling. The future needed my attention now. 2 days later, I stood in the back of the packed auditorium as Miguel took the stage for his farewell address. He'd lost weight, and the confident swagger had diminished. Still handsome, still charismatic, but somehow diminished. I won't waste your time with excuses, he began, surprising me. I made serious errors in judgment that compromised this company's integrity and its mission. For that, I apologize. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Miguel Rivera rarely apologized. For anything. Rivera Pharmaceuticals has always had one true visionary, he continued. It wasn't me. It was Dr. Sofia Rivera, whose brilliance created the foundations of everything we've achieved. I lost sight of that. I allowed ego and personal weakness to cloud my judgment. Our eyes met across the auditorium. He nodded once. Acknowledgement, not connection. Under her leadership, this company will achieve its full potential. I ask that you give her the loyalty and support I failed to provide. He left without taking questions, walking straight out through the side exit where a car waited. As the crowd dispersed, Tara approached with a small package. He left this for you, asked me to deliver it personally. Inside the box was a single item, the napkin where I'd first sketched the Neurovia formula during our dinner celebrating my postdoctoral grant approval. I'd thought it lost years ago. Scrawled in the margin in fresh ink were 2 words. I'm sorry, too little, too late. But something inside me eased slightly. Not forgiveness exactly, but the first step toward releasing the grip of betrayal. That night, I worked late on my board presentation, mapping out a vision for Rivera Pharmaceuticals that balanced scientific integrity with business growth. Around midnight, Lydia called. You need to turn on the news, she said, her voice tight. Now. I flipped to a 24-hour news channel to find Amber's face filling the screen, her expression composed as she stood before a bank of microphones. Felt ethically obligated to come forward, she was saying. Rivera Pharmaceuticals has systematically manipulated research data under Dr. Miguel Rivera's direction, placing profit above patient safety. I have documentation proving these practices continued even after Dr. Sofia Rivera resumed control of the company. My blood froze. She was implementing a scorched earth policy. If she couldn't have the company, she would burn it to the ground. Truth be damned. Turn it off, I told Lydia. Then call Renata and Walter. Emergency meeting in 30 minutes. As I gathered my things, the security system chimed, indicating someone had accessed the executive floor after hours. Security cameras showed a figure moving purposefully toward my office. Miguel, using his still-active keycard. I should have called security. Instead, I waited, curiosity overcoming caution. He paused in the doorway, surprise registering when he found me still at my desk. I thought you'd be gone, he said. Dealing with the press. You knew about Amber's press conference, I realized. That's why you're here. He stepped inside, hands raised in a placating gesture. Not the way you think. I came to warn you. And to help. Why would I trust anything you say now? Because, he said, pulling a flash drive from his pocket, I have the only copy of the real evidence Amber doesn't know exists. And it proves she's been planning this takedown from the beginning, long before you took back control. I stared at the small device that might save or destroy everything I'd fought to reclaim. What's your price? No price. He placed it on my desk. Consider it the first step in a very long apology. As he turned to leave, I found myself asking the question that had haunted me for weeks. Was any of it real? Us, I mean? Or was I always just a meal ticket with a useful brain? He stopped, shoulders sagging. It was real. I loved you, Sophia. And then I forgot how to separate that love from ambition, from ego, from the constant pressure to be more. By the time I realized what I was losing, I'd convinced myself it was too late. It was too late, I said quietly. The moment you chose her. He nodded once, acceptance in the gesture. I know, but the company shouldn't suffer for my mistakes. What's on that drive will help you fight Amber's allegations. After he left, I inserted the drive with trembling hands, unsure if this was salvation or another betrayal in the making. The flash drive contained over 200 audio recordings, Amber's voice captured through her company phone, which had been synced to the executive backup server. Miguel had discovered the automatic backups while clearing his files in the pod. The recordings Amber meticulously documented her plan: seduce Miguel to gain influence, isolate me from key decisions, create a paper trail suggesting my research focus compromised business growth, and ultimately position herself to control both the science and business sides of Rivera Pharmaceuticals. Once the patents transfer to the company, she told someone in one recording, we can edge Sophia out completely. Miguel doesn't realize I've modified her formula. The new version will be patentable separately, under my name. The most damning. Recording was dated the previous night, Amber speaking with a pharmaceutical industry blogger known for breaking scandals. The press conference is just the beginning, she said. I have fabricated evidence suggesting Sophia knew about the clinical data manipulation and approved it after taking control. It's convincing enough to trigger an FDA investigation. I listened. Until dawn, each revelation more disturbing than the last. By morning, I had a complete understanding of what we faced. Not just allegations, but a sophisticated attempt to frame me for crimes Amber herself had engineered. Renata arrived first, reviewing the evidence with clinical precision. This is both our salvation and a new problem, she said, making notes. The recordings prove Amber's malicious intent, but they also confirm there was data manipulation, which the FDA will investigate regardless. I've already ordered a complete audit of all research from the past 18 months, I said. We'll disclose everything voluntarily, including the RX-720 development. Walter arrived next, followed by our head of communications and 2 trusted board members. As the crisis team assembled in my conference room, a plan took shape. Transparency about the past issues, clear accountability placing responsibility with the former leadership, and a commitment to new research protocols that would set industry standards for integrity. The press conference needs to happen immediately, our communications director urged, before Amber can make more allegations. I checked my watch, 7:30 a.m. Schedule it for noon. That gives us 4 hours to prepare. As the team dispersed to handle their assignments, Walter remained behind. You seem remarkably calm for someone facing a potential company-killing scandal, he observed. I tapped the flash drive. Because for the first time in this whole ordeal, I have absolute clarity. Amber didn't just target me or Miguel, she targeted the science itself. That makes this simple. Simple? His bushy eyebrows rose. When someone threatens your life's work, the research that could help millions of patients, the path forward becomes crystal clear. I gathered my notes. This isn't about my marriage, my position, or even my reputation anymore. It's about protecting the integrity of life-saving science. He studied me with new appreciation. You've changed these past weeks. I've remembered who I was before I became Mrs. Miguel Rivera. I met his gaze steadily. The scientist who believed knowledge mattered more than power, the woman who wouldn't compromise her integrity for convenience. At 11:45, I stood in the lobby of Rivera Pharmaceuticals, surrounded by our research team. I'd decided against using the formal press room. This statement needed to come from the heart of our company, with the scientists who did the real work standing beside me. As cameras set up and reporters assembled, Tara approached with an envelope. This just came by courier, marked urgent and personal. She handed me the sealed document. Inside was a letter from the National Institutes of Health. The grant committee had approved my Alzheimer's research proposal, submitted months ago and forgotten. In the chaos of recent events, $15 million in funding for the work I truly cared about, independent of Rivera Pharmaceuticals. An escape route if I wanted it. I folded the letter and slipped it into my pocket, just as the communications director signaled we were about to go live. Stepping to the microphones, I felt a strange calm. The cameras no longer intimidated me. The potential fallout no longer terrified me. I had science on my side, truth as my shield. Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Sophia Rivera, CEO of Rivera Pharmaceuticals. I've called this press conference to address serious allegations made by our former executive, Amber Daniels. I laid out the facts methodically: the discovery of data manipulation, the audit we'd launched, the evidence of Amber's orchestrated campaign to undermine the company's research integrity. While it would be easier to simply deny these allegations, that approach would betray our core mission. At Rivera Pharmaceuticals, we don't hide from difficult truths. We face them, learn from them, and emerge stronger. I announced a series of sweeping changes: an independent oversight board for all clinical trials, published raw data for greater transparency, and a new whistleblower protection program for researchers who identified potential issues. In the coming weeks, we will cooperate fully with any FDA investigation. We have nothing to hide and everything to prove about our commitment to patients. As questions flew from reporters, I navigated them with newfound confidence, neither defensive nor combative. When asked about Miguel and Amber's roles, I refused to cast blame. Leadership means taking responsibility, not assigning it. The failures happened under our watch, and the solutions will too. By evening, the story had evolved from potential scandal to corporate redemption. Financial analysts praised our transparency. Patient advocacy groups expressed support. The Rivera Pharmaceuticals stock, after an initial plunge, stabilized as investors responded to our clear action plan. In my office afterward, I reread the NIH grant letter. $15 million to pursue research I was passionate about, without corporate pressures or board expectations. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. Lydia entered, looking unusually formal in a blazer I'd never seen before. "Impressive press conference," she said, settling into a chair. "But there's something we should discuss. The NIH grant? I just got the letter today." "Not the grant." She pulled a business card from her pocket, sliding it across the desk. "This." The card bore a simple logo, a double helix intertwined with a mortar and pestle. Rivera Chen Biosciences. "What is this?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Our new company." She leaned forward, eyes bright with the intensity I remembered from our graduate school days. "You have the patents and the NIH funding. I have the lab space and a team ready to move. We don't need Rivera Pharmaceuticals. We can build something better, something truly ours." I turned the card over in my fingers. "You've been planning this since the day Miguel demoted you. I was just waiting for you to be ready." She gestured around the executive office. "This was never really you, Sophia. The corporate politics, the power struggles. You belong in a lab, making discoveries that matter." She was right. Despite reclaiming my CEO position, something still felt misaligned. I'd been fighting so hard to take back what was stolen that I hadn't questioned whether it was what I truly wanted. "What about Rivera Pharmaceuticals? I can't just abandon the company." "You wouldn't be. Walter and the board can handle the transition. You've set up the reforms, cleared the path forward. Now you can choose your own future instead of just reclaiming the one Miguel tried to take." I opened my desk drawer and removed my old research journal, the one where I'd written my original migraine treatment breakthrough, with Miguel's note in the margin. "He believed in me once," I said quietly, "or at least in what I could do for him. And I believe in what we can build together, as equals." Lydia's voice softened. "No husbands, no corporate ladders, no games, just brilliant science that helps people." I closed the journal. "I need time to think." "Of course." She stood to leave. "But don't take too long. Some opportunities don't come around twice." After she left, I walked through the quiet building to my private lab. This space, at least, felt authentic. The equipment I'd selected, the procedures I'd designed, the research that had always been my true passion. My phone buzzed with a text from Miguel. "Saw the press conference. You were magnificent. For whatever it's worth, I'm proud of you." Once, those words would have meant everything. Now they were just text on a screen, acknowledgement from a man who had become a stranger. I texted back, Thank you for the flash drive. It made a difference. His response came quickly. I'm leaving for the Buenos Aires office tomorrow. Fresh start. The divorce papers are with my attorney. Signed. All terms accepted. Simple as that. 16 years of marriage, concluded in a text message. I set the phone down and turned to my microscope, focusing on a slide from my Alzheimer's research. The cellular changes were subtle but promising, early indicators that the treatment pathway might work. This was where I found meaning, not in boardrooms or press conferences or corporate warfare, but in the painstaking, revolutionary work of understanding how the brain functioned and how to heal it when it faltered. Dawn found me still, in the lab, a decision crystallizing with the rising sun. I called Walter first, then Renata, then the board chair. By 9, the framework was in place. A graceful exit as CEO once the crisis stabilized, transitioning to head a new independent research division that would partner with Rivera Pharmaceuticals, while maintaining scientific autonomy. Lydia arrived as I was packing my research notes. Well? She asked, taking in the boxes. I handed her back the business card, now modified with my own handwriting. Rivera Chen Independent Research Institute. Not a pharmaceutical company? She asked. Something better. An independent institute, focused on neurological research, no profit pressures, no shareholders to please. Just pure science, funded by my patent royalties and the NIH grant. Her smile spread slowly. And Rivera Pharmaceuticals? We'll be our first commercial partner with a non-exclusive licensing agreement for anything we develop. I closed the last box. I'm done fighting over the past. I want to build something new. 3 months later, I stood in our new laboratory, Space, a converted warehouse with state-of-the-art equipment, and 16 researchers recruited from top institutions worldwide. Sunlight streamed through skylights onto gleaming workstations, where scientists moved with purpose, unencumbered by corporate metrics or quarterly projections. My phone chimed with a news alert. Rivera Pharmaceuticals announces full FDA clearance. Following data review. The company had survived, reformed under Walter's interim leadership. Another notification followed. An email from Miguel, his first since leaving the country. The subject line read simply, "You were right." The message contained a photo of the framed napkin with my original formula, now hanging in the Buenos Aires office lobby with a new plaque. In honor of Dr. Sofia Rivera, whose brilliance changed millions of lives. Below the photo, he'd written, "Some men spend their lives trying to build monuments to themselves. I was fortunate enough to be married to a woman who built something that actually mattered. I'm sorry I forgot that." I closed the email without responding. Some chapters didn't need a final word. Lydia appeared at my side, lab coat already stained, with purple reagent. Ready for the staff meeting? The new graduate fellows are eager to meet you. I tucked my phone away, turning toward the conference room where young scientists waited, their careers just beginning, their potential limitless. Absolutely, I said, feeling lighter than I had in years. Let's show them how we're going to change the world. My husband had demoted me for his assistant, but he'd forgotten I held the patents. Now I held something far more valuable, the freedom to create my own legacy, on my own terms, without compromise, and that was a future worth building. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us. A mistake? The word tasted bitter. People suffered permanent brain damage because of your mistake. The woman in case study 7 is 26 years old. She can't remember her husband's face now. Something crumpled in his expression. The final collapse of the man I'd once admired. He sank onto a reception chair, head in his hands. What happens now? The board has called for your resignation. The SEC is investigating. There will likely be criminal charges. He looked up, searching my face. And us? Is there anything left to salvage there? The question was so disconnected from reality that I almost laughed. There is no us, Miguel. There hasn't been since the moment you chose to demote me for your assistant. Everything since then has just been paperwork. I still love you, he said quietly, despite everything. No. I stepped back, the words striking like physical blows. You loved what I could give you: scientific credibility, intellectual property, a narrative of joint success. That's not love. That's utilization. Security arrived then, having been called by my concerned assistant. As they escorted him out, Miguel turned back once. I never meant for any of this to happen. The saddest part is, I believe you. I met his gaze steadily. You never meant for consequences to apply to you. After he was gone, I returned to my lab bench, hands trembling as I adjusted the microscope. Lydia appeared at my side, wordlessly handing me a tissue. I'm not crying, I said, though my voice betrayed me. I know. She squeezed my shoulder. You're angry. You have every right to be. I straightened, refocusing on the slide containing our latest Alzheimer's protein markers. The past keeps trying to drag me backward. I need to move forward. Speaking of forward, Lydia hesitated. The NIH called. They want to fast-track additional funding for our neural regeneration project. Apparently, our preliminary results are extraordinarily promising. Despite everything, a spark of genuine excitement flared. This was the work that mattered. Not corporate battles or personal vendettas, but scientific advancement that could help millions. We'll need to expand the research team, I said, already mentally restructuring our lab space. And that specialized imaging equipment we couldn't initially afford. Already ordered, Lydia grinned. I took the liberty after the NIH call. Arrives next week? For the first time in days, I smiled. What would I do without you? Fortunately, you'll never have to find out. Her expression grew serious. But there's something else. The Rivera Pharmaceuticals board has requested an emergency meeting, with both of us. Why both? They wouldn't say, just that it's urgent and relates to the company's future. The request felt ominous after everything that had transpired. Whatever they wanted, I doubted it would be simple or easy. When? Tomorrow morning. I told them we'd be there, but I can cancel. No. I removed my lab coat. Decision made. Let's hear what they have to say. But they come to us this time. The next morning, Walter arrived with the board chair and CFO. They looked like men attending a funeral. Somber, uncomfortable, bearing news no one wanted to deliver. We met in our conference room, the Rivera Pharmaceuticals executives looking oddly out of place among our lab equipment and research posters. No executive leather chairs here, no mahogany table, just functional furniture and the tools of scientific discovery. Walter spoke first, ever the diplomat. The company is in crisis. The RX-720 scandal, coming so soon after the Amber situation. We're facing a catastrophic loss of investor confidence. And how is that our concern? Lydia asked pointedly. We're no longer affiliated with Rivera Pharmaceuticals. The board chair cleared his throat. That's why we're here. We want to propose a merger. I blinked, certain I'd misheard. A merger? Between a multinational pharmaceutical corporation and our independent research institute? That makes no sense. It makes perfect sense. The CFO pushed forward a folder containing financial projections. Rivera Pharmaceuticals has lost its research credibility, but retains manufacturing and distribution infrastructure. Your institute has impeccable scientific credentials but limited resources for bringing treatments to market. I glanced at the documents without touching them. You want to absorb us. We want to transform. Walter's quiet voice cut through the tension. Rivera Pharmaceuticals cannot survive as it currently exists. Its reputation is too damaged. But Rivera Chen could become the standard-bearer for ethical pharmaceutical research. The proposal outlined a complete corporate reorganization. The Rivera Pharmaceuticals name would be retired, replaced by Rivera Chen Biosciences. The new entity would combine my institute's research protocols with the company's production capabilities, all under a governance structure that prioritized scientific integrity over quarterly profits. And leadership? I asked, already knowing the answer. The board chair didn't flinch. We're unanimously recommending you as CEO, with Dr. Chen as Chief Scientific Officer. Complete authority over research priorities, clinical trials, everything. It was vindication on a scale I'd never imagined. Not just reclaiming my position, but being handed the entire company on my terms. The company that had once pushed me aside now begged for my return as its salvation. We'll need time to consider. This, I said, maintaining my composure despite the magnitude of the moment. After they left, Lydia and I sat in silence, the proposal between us like a live wire. They're desperate, she finally said. They're trying to salvage what's left using our reputation. Yes. I tapped the folder thoughtfully. The question is whether we want to be their salvation. What are you thinking? I looked around at our lab, the clean, honest space we'd built, free from corporate politics and shareholder demands. Then I thought of the thousands of patients who could benefit if we had greater resources to develop and distribute treatments. I'm thinking, I said slowly, that this isn't the ending I expected. Lydia nodded, understanding in her eyes. It's not an ending at all. It's another beginning. Whatever we decided, one thing was certain. I would never again allow anyone to push me aside from what I had built. The patents had been just the beginning of my power. The real strength lay in the science itself, and that had always been mine. Picked up the phone to call Renata. We had terms to negotiate. 1 year to the day after Miguel had demoted me in that sterile conference room, I stood on a stage accepting the Pharmaceutical Innovation Award for Rivera Chen Biosciences' groundbreaking Alzheimer's treatment protocol. This recognition belongs to our research team, I said into the microphone, the spotlights warming my face as I addressed the industry's elite, particularly to the scientists who had the courage to prioritize data integrity over expedience, truth over convenience, patience over profits. In the front row, Lydia smiled. My partner, my friend, the woman who'd stood beside me through collapse and resurrection. Beside her sat Walter, now our board chair emeritus and head of the ethics committee that reviewed every research protocol before approval. The merger had transformed both entities in ways none of us had anticipated. Rivera Pharmaceuticals' infrastructure combined with our research protocols had created something genuinely new in the industry. A company where scientific rigor wasn't merely a marketing slogan, but a foundational principle. After the ceremony, at the reception that followed, I found myself cornered by Julian Mercer, CEO of our largest competitor. Quite the comeback story, he said, champagne flute dangling from manicured fingers. From ousted executive to industry darling in 18 months, one might almost suspect you orchestrated the whole saga. I sipped my sparkling water, unfazed by the insinuation. If I were orchestrating events, Julian, I'd have skipped the part where people were harmed by falsified data. Ah yes, the great RX 720 scandal. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Convenient how it eliminated your ex-husband from the equation entirely. Nothing about scientific fraud is convenient, I replied coolly. Though I understand why some might be uncomfortable with our emphasis on data transparency. Not every company could withstand that level of scrutiny. The implied threat wasn't subtle. Our company's new protocols had already forced 3 competitors to withdraw drugs after our published research revealed undisclosed side effects. He leaned closer, voice dropping. Word is you've acquired the neurochem patents. Moving into our territory now? I met his gaze steadily. We go where the science leads us, Julian. Perhaps you should try it sometime. As he stalked away, Lydia appeared at my elbow. Making friends, as usual? Just reminding the old guard that the landscape has changed. She handed me a tablet displaying our latest trial results. Speaking of change, the neural regeneration numbers just came in. They're even better than projected. I studied. The data, pulse quickening with genuine excitement. The treatment we'd developed showed a 37% improvement in cognitive function for early-stage Alzheimer's patients, unprecedented in the field. We need to fast-track this, I said. Schedule a meeting with the full research team tomorrow. Already. Done. Lydia's efficiency remained unmatched. Also, there's something else you should know. Miguel's trial begins next week. The mention of his name no longer provoked the visceral reaction it once had. The criminal charges for research fraud had proceeded exactly as predicted. Miguel faced up to 15 years in federal prison. Will you testify? She asked carefully. If required. I handed back the tablet. But my written statement should be sufficient. We'd had no contact since his desperate visit to my lab. According to Walter, Miguel had retreated into seclusion after his indictment, refusing all visitors except his attorney. The man who had once commanded boardrooms with charismatic confidence now reportedly couldn't meet anyone's eyes. I should feel something more, I admitted quietly, gazing across the glittering reception. Vindication, satisfaction, even anger. But mostly I feel nothing. That's called healing, Lydia said simply. When they no longer have the power to hurt you. Commotion near the entrance drew our attention. Tara, now our director of research compliance, rushed toward us, concern etched on her face. Dr. Rivera, there's a situation. The FDA just announced an emergency review of all migraine medications following 3 unexplained deaths. Neurovia is on the list. The room seemed to tilt momentarily. Neurovia, my original breakthrough drug, the foundation upon which everything else was built. What deaths? What evidence? My mind raced through possibilities. Cerebral hemorrhages in younger patients? The common factor appears to be genetic. All 3 had a rare variant of the MTHFR gene. I locked eyes with Lydia, both of us reaching the same conclusion simultaneously. The variant was present in less than 0.1% of the population. Too rare to have been captured in standard clinical trials. We need access to the case files immediately, I said, already moving toward the exit, and pull our extended genetic screening data from the follow-up studies. Within hours, our crisis team had assembled at headquarters. Through the night, we analyzed data, reviewed case histories, and constructed molecular models of how Neurovia might interact with the rare genetic variant. By dawn, we had our answer, and a solution. It's a secondary metabolite, I explained to the emergency board meeting, pointing to the molecular diagram. In patients with this specific genetic variant, Neurovia breaks down into a compound that weakens blood vessel walls in the brain, but only after prolonged use of 3+ years. What's our exposure? Asked the CFO, the human toll not his first concern. Approximately 4,000 patients worldwide might have this variant. We need to identify and contact everyone immediately. And the solution? Walter prompted. I nodded. To our chief chemist, who pulled up a modified molecular structure on the display. We've already designed a reformulation that eliminates the problematic metabolite pathway. Production could begin within weeks, pending FDA approval. The costs will be enormous, the CFO warned. Recalls, reformulation, potential litigation. The cost of doing nothing would be far greater, I replied sharply. This isn't just about legal liability. It's about who we are as a company. The decision was unanimous. Immediate voluntary recall, genetic screening offered to all patients, expedited, reformulation, and complete transparency with regulators. 6 months into launching Rivera Chen Independent Research Institute, I discovered what Miguel had hidden from me in the Buenos Aires transfer. The Phase 2 clinical trial data for RX-720 showed rare but devastating side effects in 3% of participants. Effects that had been deliberately concealed. The revelation came through a nervous email from a junior researcher in Argentina who couldn't reconcile his conscience with the data manipulation. Attached were the original results: encephalitis occurring in 7 patients out of 235, with 2 cases resulting in permanent neurological damage. They told us the anomalies were unrelated to the drug, he wrote, but the temporal relationship is undeniable. I stared at my screen, coffee growing cold beside me. This wasn't just fraud. It was criminal negligence that could have harmed countless patients had the drug reached market. Lydia found me still at my desk at 10 p.m., surrounded by printouts of molecular structures and patient data. "You should have called me," she said, scanning the reports with practiced eyes. "Oh my God, the binding protein is crossing the blood-brain barrier." "Exactly." I pointed to my calculations. "It's a modification of my original formula, but they changed the delivery mechanism without fully understanding the neurological implications. The very thing that makes it more effective also makes it potentially deadly." "What are you going to do?" This implicates Miguel directly. The question hung between us. Miguel, who had provided the evidence that saved the company from Amber's allegations. Miguel, who had signed away everything in our divorce without contest. Miguel, who still headed the South American division. "The truth," I said finally. "Whatever the consequences." The next morning, I called Walter and the Rivera Pharmaceuticals board chair, bypassing normal channels. Within hours, I was on a secure video conference with the company's executive committee, the gravity of my expression silencing the usual pleasantries. "RX-720 has to be completely withdrawn from development," I concluded after presenting the evidence. "And we need to contact all trial participants immediately for neurological evaluation." "This will devastate our stock price," the CFO protested. "We're just recovering from the Amber situation." "And it puts us at significant legal risk," added the legal counsel. "These patients could sue." "They absolutely should sue," I snapped, patience evaporating. "They were harmed by corporate negligence. But that's not why I'm here. I'm here because I founded this company to help patients, not harm them." Walter's weathered face showed understanding. "What do you suggest, Dr. Rivera?" "Full disclosure to regulatory authorities, immediate medical intervention for all trial participants, and—" I hesitated, then pushed forward. "Miguel Rivera needs to be removed from the company entirely." The silence was deafening. Miguel might have lost the CEO position, but he remained a major shareholder and headed their fastest-growing division. "Do you understand what you're asking?" The board chair leaned forward. The optics of this following so closely behind the Amber scandal. "I understand exactly what I'm asking," I interrupted. "And I also understand that if you don't act, I'll take this information to the FDA myself." Not a bluff. Never a bluff. When it came to patient safety, the fallout was swift and merciless. Rivera Pharmaceuticals stock plummeted 42% in a single day after the company announced the trial issues. Class action lawsuits materialized within hours. Financial analysts called it a catastrophic breakdown in research integrity. Miguel didn't go quietly. A terse email arrived as the news broke. "You could have handled this internally. You've destroyed what's left of the company out of spite." I didn't dignify it with a response. This wasn't about our failed marriage or his betrayal. It was about scientific truth and patient lives. 3 days into the crisis, as I worked late preparing testimony for a regulatory hearing, my lab's security system alerted me to an unexpected visitor. The camera feed showed Miguel himself, haggard and unshaven, waiting at the entrance. "Should I call security?" my assistant asked, tension vibrating in her voice. "No." I straightened my lab coat. "I'll handle this." He stood in our gleaming reception area like a ghost, familiar yet fundamentally altered. The confident executive had been replaced by someone hollow-eyed and diminished. "You shouldn't be here," I said, keeping my distance. "I needed to see you." His voice rasped with exhaustion. "To explain—" "Explain what?" "How you knowingly concealed dangerous side effects? How you were willing to risk patients' lives for quarterly profits." He flinched. "It wasn't like that. The research team assured me—" "Stop." I held up my hand. "I've read all the emails, Miguel. You specifically instructed them to classify the encephalitis cases as unrelated events, despite statistical evidence. To the contrary," his shoulders sagged, "I made a terrible mistake." In the following days, as we implemented our response, something unexpected happened. Our stock, which had initially plummeted at the news, began to recover as analysts praised our exemplary crisis management and commitment to patient safety over short-term profits. The FDA commissioner herself called to acknowledge our proactive approach. "This is how responsible pharmaceutical companies should operate," she said. "You've set a new standard." 3 months later, reformulated Neurovia received expedited approval. No additional adverse events had been reported, thanks to our rapid intervention. The crisis that might have destroyed us had instead reinforced our reputation as industry leaders in both innovation and integrity. The turning point came when pharmaceutical students at leading universities listed Rivera Chen as their top choice for employment, not for the salary, but for our scientific standards. On a crisp autumn morning, as golden light streamed through my office windows, I signed the final paperwork for our newest initiative, the Rivera Chen Pharmaceutical Ethics Institute, an independent organization that would audit clinical trials across the industry. A knock at my door revealed Tara. "Dr. Rivera, there's a delivery for you." She placed a small package on my desk. No return address, but the Buenos Aires postmark told me everything I needed to know. Inside was a USB drive and a handwritten note on Rivera Pharmaceuticals' letterhead. "Sophia, by the time you read this, my trial will have concluded. Whatever the verdict. I wanted you to have these. The original research notes you compiled during our first year, when we worked side by side in that tiny lab, believing we could change medicine forever. You were right about everything. The science, the ethics, the patients. I lost sight of what mattered in pursuit of what didn't. You've built something remarkable from the ruins of my mistakes. I read about the Alzheimer's breakthrough. I saw your acceptance speech online. The pharmaceutical world finally has the Bay leader it deserves. I won't ask forgiveness. Some broken things can't be repaired. But I want you to know that in my darkest moments, I take comfort in knowing that the company we started together is now truly fulfilling its promise under your guidance. Miguel. I set the note aside and inserted the USB drive. There they were. My earliest calculations, hypotheses, and observations, documented in meticulous detail. The pure, uncorrupted science that had started everything. Some might have seen the gesture as manipulative, a last attempt to evoke sympathy before sentencing. Perhaps it was, but it also felt like the closing of a circle, the return of what had been mine from the beginning. I removed the drive and locked it in my desk drawer. The past was archived. The future awaited. My phone buzzed with a message. From Lydia. Neural tissue regeneration results confirmed. 42% improvement in latest cohort. We did it. Outside my window, I could see researchers crossing the campus, heading to the labs where breakthroughs happened daily. The company Miguel and I had started had transformed into something neither of us could have imagined. Something better, stronger, more principled. I'd lost a husband but reclaimed my purpose. Lost a marriage but gained a mission. The intercom buzzed. Dr. Rivera, the research team is assembled for the briefing. I'll be right there, I replied, gathering my notes. As I walked toward the conference room, I passed the wall where our company's core values were displayed, the first being scientific integrity above all. My choice of words, my insistence. Miguel had demoted me for his assistant, but he'd forgotten I held the patents. Now I held something infinitely more valuable, the power to ensure that science served humanity, not shareholders. That research pursued truth, not convenience. That medicine healed patients, not balance sheets. He had taken my position, but inadvertently given me my purpose, and for that, in the strangest way, I was grateful. I pushed open the conference room doors, where brilliant minds awaited my direction. This was my legacy, not revenge or reclamation, but revolution, the creation of something that would outlast all of us. Good morning, I said, taking my place at the head of the table. Let's change the world. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.